Hey everyone, welcome to WHC Talks. My name is Emil Falcon. I'm the founder and CEO of Web Hosting Canada. And today we're going to be joined by Arif Mirza, who's a domain investor, a builder, and a prominent kind of part of the domain community out here in Canada. And this show, we're going to have some real conversations with real people who are building something meaningful online. This episode today I've been looking forward to for a long time. We're diving into a world that most people don't even know exists. It's the world of domains, and not just as a web address, but as an asset, as an investment, something that we will use to generate a ton of money or a ton of value. And trust me, by the end of this conversation, you're going to see the internet very differently. So Arif Mirza is a brand consultant. He's a domain investor, one of the most active community builders in the domain world. He runs domainpodcast.com, hosts the Domain Social, and created Domainer Week, a 9-day online conference that pulled in 50 industry leaders. Born and raised right here in Montreal, got his first domain in 1999, sitting on around 5,000 domains. And this is the part that I love. He's also a poker dealer. Which might be the most useful background a domain investor could have. It means that you're good at reading the table, knowing when to hold, knowing when to fold. So welcome, Arif.
Thank you, Emil. Yeah, nice to be here.
For those in our audience that are wondering, what are we talking about? What are even domain names? Let's maybe get back to the basics for just a minute and explain in layman terms what is a domain name. Why is it important? And for somebody starting online or offline, why it's an essential part of their business?
Yeah. Well, it's a good question because a lot of people don't realize that there's a difference between the domain name and the website, right? The domain name is actually the website address, right? It connects your keyboard to the website you want to go to. Right, and there's different levels of technicality you can get to it, but essentially it's the name like WHC.ca, right? And when you enter that in your keyboard, and press enter, you'll get the website, right? And it's not just as easy as we think. There's servers in the back end. There's ICANN accredited sort of. We won't get too technical, but basically it's the link, and so it's. Your website is the inside of the building, but your domain is the address in the front, right? The street sign and what city it's in and location. Mm-hmm. And so it's vital, right? But it's not the contents, right? The contents is the other end of it. But so the great thing about domains is that they're unique. I think we talked about this a little bit before. Is that domains are one of one. You can only have one instance of a domain, so it's your address. It belongs to you. Right, and so if you want your customers to come to your digital doorway, right, they got to know what that address is. And so usually you would go out and when you're starting off, you don't really know how to get the best ones. You go to your registrar, like you guys, and you'll type in, let's say, music.com, right, and it's taken. Well, what do? Right? It's like your first thing's like, no, I want to get that. That was my idea. But the thing is, like, there's 160 million .coms that are taken out there. So, for .coms, there's not a lot of choice. I don't know how many .cas are out there. I think it's in the tens of millions or in that range, I think it is.
I think it's less than that.
Is it? Maybe sure. Anyway,
that's a good question. We should find out and
you guys should know that. Yeah. But
what's
Google,
that?
Yeah. I'm checking. But just to say is that, like, more often than not, your first, your second, your third, your fourth, and your fifth choice will not be available. Mm-hmm. Now, again, we're going back
How many words in the English language in the dictionary? I'm curious. Also, we're going to have our fact checkers look it up and see how many more domains than there are words in the English language. It also depends
how common the words are, right? Mm-hmm. And so that's the thing. Is that there's a ton of one-word .com domains that are available, mm-hmm. right? But they're very rarely used, and there's no business sort of case behind them, so nobody registers them, right? Or some people register them and then they'll let it expire the next year. But so getting back to the domain itself, like there's different categories in terms of quality, right? And so for me, I always I say there's three different categories, broadly speaking, for categories. There's 80 to 85%, which are really just total garbage, like too long, too convoluted, hyphens. It's basically good enough for pictures of your grandmother's three-legged cat type of thing, right? Just not useful. Then there's another category, which is maybe 15 to 20%, just rough numbers, where it's like, it's good enough, right? Like your original one, it was not the top one, but it was good enough. Would I say, yeah, you should start your business on that? I go, well, maybe not. But if you're just starting off and your budget for the domain is like, $20, well, then it's good enough to start with, right? And then you have roughly about 3% of domains which are investment quality. Those are the ones that somebody like myself will look at, and we'll get into a little bit of how I get them a little bit afterwards. But there's 3% maybe of domains that are really like, the quality is much more elevated. Either they're short, they're snappy, they're memorable. Sometimes it can be longer, like a phrase, but it's a memorable phrase, right? A catchy phrase or a phrase that means something business-wise, or more often than not, like what I call bread and butter domains, two-word.coms, or well, it's usually .coms for myself, but two-word domains that are just really two words that go very well together. Memorable, and usually that there's other elements to it. The words aren't too long, or one of the words is a geolocation. So people, it's like Montreal hosting, let's say. Well, the hosting is not relevant to the geolocation, but as an example, Montreal hosting, people in Montreal, they're not going to forget the Montreal portion of it. So sometimes geo names are good, even if they're not as short. But just catchy brands with a good keyword and another word focus in the business that people aren't going to forget. And sometimes alliteration is a good example of making it more memorable, or something that rhymes. There's many different factors involved.
Something that's easy to understand. If our ex chief domain officer Frank is listening in, he'll mention the radio test. He's a big fan of the radio test.
Clarity,
if it's clear when you listen to it on the radio how it's actually spelled. That's extra points, and it makes for a generally more effective domain name, because people don't have to ask, well, how do you spell that? Like, how many times have you perhaps even seen or heard an ad where there's somebody's saying the domain name and then spelling it out just in case you're not understanding it, or even worse, saying the domain name and then you type it in and you land on somebody else's website. I mean, that's great for those guys because they just had free advertisement. But
that's exactly where somebody like myself will look through this expired domains or domains that aren't registered yet to find something that's memorable, exactly for that reason. Because people don't realize when they start, I want to spend $20 in domain, right? As opposed to a much, much better domain for $5,000, right? They go, oh, I'm saving money. I'm saving $4,980. But the reality is you're not, because every time you need to spell out the name because it's not clear, you're losing customers, right? Or you're spending more on your advertising so that it gets through to people's heads. You have to pass that commercial on TV or on the radio or whatever media you're using 10 times instead of 5 times, right? And that difference, it adds up in terms of your marketing spend very, very quickly. So all these factors come into play. Oftentimes it's like at the point I'm at now, 10 years as a domain investor, it's more of a gut check than anything else. But for somebody new, it's really important to know that you can't have two random words. So if you're just a business person or somebody want to start up a project or whatever it is, you go to WHC.ca, right? You go, or whatever your local or your favorite registrar is, you punch it in and you see what works, right? Now, at the same time, if you have your business plan next to you and you go, no, this is something I'm going to spend hundreds of hours on and probably multiple thousands of dollars at least, investing time, energy, the hosting, all these other things, you go, well, if I could really get a much better domain for, a little bit more money, let's say $3,000, $5,000 for that, what I call a bread and butter domain, is it worth it for me? And more often than not, if you want to do something serious, the answer is yes. So sometimes some registrars, as we're talking about, when you search for these higher grade domains, sometimes they have affiliations with these online distributors where I would list my domains and my domains would show up in the search results. Not in all registrars. Sometimes you just want to type in the domain name, and sometimes someone like myself will have, let's say, what we call a landing page. So basically, it's you type in one of my domain names I have for sale, and up comes it's not a real website.
Let's pause for a second.
Yeah.
We'll get to sort of. We'll transition to the conversation about the domain aftermarket in just a second. Let's just paint a bit of a picture of what we're looking at in terms of businesses starting out.
Yeah.
They're searching for their domain. They're going on a domain provider's domain search tool. For reference for the listeners out there, Web Hosting Canada is one of them. You can think of big brands that you may have heard of that do this. Two Cows is one other one. GoDaddy, many have heard of if you're looking for an American provider. And so you're going to want to work with a provider that you know and trust, and that ideally speaks your language and delivers services in your local geography. There are many to choose from. And so if you were to just register a domain that hasn't been registered for, what would you be looking at in terms of approximate budget?
It depends what kind of volume you want. But typically,
A
like
single domain,
.ca,
somebody just starting out.
.ca or a .com will run you $10 to $20, depending on which registrar you'll go to, right? And just for the technical terms, registrar means it's usually also associated with a hosting company where you'll have that search bar, you type in the domain, and you can buy it from them.
Yeah.
There's three different levels. There's the registry, which is basically it's the company that takes care of like how .ca will work. For .com, it's a company called VeriSign, and they have their agreements with all the registrars. So you have the registry, the registrar, where you can buy the domains. You can't buy it from the registry. You go to one of the registrars, and then you're also, as the customer, you're the registrant, but nobody really says that. You're just the domain owner, even if some people say you do or you don't own domains because you're really renting them in perpetuity, but you have the right to do it. And so it's like owning is what we do say,
right?
Even if it's not technically the case. So in the simplest form, it's the traditional buy low, sell high, right? There's different categories of domains, right? For myself, I operate in what I call, I mentioned it before, bread and butter domains. Typically a 2-word combination .com. And I'll look at mostly, for myself personally, expired domains that go through auction. So basically, somebody has a business, or they had a thought of making a business, they never started it, or they changed their plans, or whatever it is, they let the domain expire, and those domains go through auction processes at different registrars, at different times and whatever it is. So what I do is I'll look at the lists of these, different expiring domains, and I'll go, oh, this one looks like it has potential that somebody else might be interested in at some point, right? Ideally, more than one person. When you're a domain investor, you don't want domains that are really just targeting one person or one company. You want something there'll be a broad interest in, right? Either very open, generic, or in a category, keywords in a category that really make good business sense. So that's what I do. I go through the list, and at say GoDaddy per se, they have a lot of expiring domains every single day. In their expiration auctions, there's 50,000 new domains that go to auction, right? And so I'll look at them, and most of them fall into that 85%. That's just what were you thinking? Then there's another 15% or so that are like, okay, good enough, but not strong enough that I can make a high enough multiple on it to have an overall profitable business. Because typical bread and butter domains, sorry for typing, hitting the mic, but typical bread and butter domains really would have only 1% sell-through rate per year. So I do not sell 99% of my domains every single year, yet I manage to be profitable as a domain investor, which means I have to buy stuff very cheap, stuff that falls through the cracks. Oftentimes that, if somebody had got an auction, well, it might have gone to the hundreds of dollars, but because nobody saw it at the auction, after the auction, there's a separate process called a closeout, right? Which means nobody bid at auction, so now it's a closeout, so it's available for the first come, first serve, and over a period of a few days. Again, it depends on the registrar and their system, but the price will start maybe at $50 or $20, and over 3 or 4 days, that will go down to maybe $5. The biggest factor is your time factor, especially when you're starting, because you have to find the right domains at the right prices, which isn't easy. Again, there's also the knowledge aspect as well. As you develop your skills, you'll go through lists faster, and you'll be more precise. The number one question I always have to ask myself multiple times before buying even a domain for $5 is, who are the buyers for this domain, right? Meaning like buyers, meaning normally you want multiple buyers, but it's also what price bucket does it fall into? What's the probability of sale? These things really, really matter. But you know, on top of that, you really just, I was losing my train of thought here a little bit, but yeah, you really want to figure out supply and demand. That's what people, when people got into well, not crypto, but like the NFTs. I remember back in 2021, we were in domain rooms, everybody was talking NFTs instead of domains. I was telling people, like, what are you doing? This is only going to end exactly the way it did. And I go, not only that, it's written in stone. And the reason I said that is because the fundamentals of businesses or of finance is supply and demand, right? And people go, well, NFTs, yeah, but people want them, this and that. I go, no, this is hype demand. People want to, you know, they're the FOMO type of thing. But do the people really want these JPEGs of a monkey or whatever it is? No, it was basically, yeah, it started off well because people wanted to be in the same club as like Puffy Daddy or Martha Stewart or, you know, whoever, Justin Bieber, whoever had the apes or whatever it was, people want to be part of that. And there is value to that, right? But otherwise, it's just a JPEG. And so, and then as it got more popular, these things can be duplicated. You have the apes, you have the giraffes, you have the monkeys, you have the zebras, you have all these other things. So there's, the supply is almost infinite, except for the first few ones that have a true collector's value. But with domains...
So there isn't that aspect of scarcity.
Well, domains there is for the quality.
Yeah, with the NFTs,
they're very
I mean,
much,
that you have, that you now have with domains.
But with domains, the demand side is what's really there. The demand is, yes, there are people in the world who want to start businesses and make money from those businesses, and who also realize a better domain name that I'm going to pay $3,000 to $5,000 for, or $10,000 for, or whatever the price point might be, is going to enhance my business, and that is a metric that can be measured, right? Somebody goes, this will help me amplify my business by, you know, when you're starting off, you're not going to know the exact amount, but you're going to know that a better quality domain is going to really help enhance, speed up your business process, or get you more customers, because word of mouth is easier. People remember when they talk to their friend, they go, oh yeah, it's a very short, you know, it's snappy domain instead of blah, 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 super long one. And that makes a difference. That makes you more money. And that, when it comes to domains, is where the demand is. Now, where I come into play is I got to realize, okay, well, which of these domains makes sense for that broad range of people? I personally invest in a very wide range of types of domains in different categories. So like I see different things here and there, and I'll buy things that make sense. But again, you got to ask yourself, again, the primary question is, who are the buyers?
Yeah.
And
Arif, do the buyers come to you, or do you find the buyers?
So there's two ways of doing domain investing. There are some people who, hats off to them, superpower outbound sales, who night
Find
and day,
the buyers.
they go and they find the buyers. I don't. I have
You
my
let them
regular
come to you.
job. I've already said, you know, which is, at some point I might switch over, but I have my regular job. I do this, in theory, part-time, although there have been moments where there have been stretches where it's been 2 full-time jobs. But at the same time, yeah, I sit back, I list my domains for sale, I price them at price points that make sense, you know, for somebody. If they think of it, they're going to say, oh yeah, that price makes sense for me because it's in this business category, and it sells. And I actually, these days, I sell even a little bit less than 1% of my domain names. But my average price point has gone up quite a bit in recent years. So like I'm comfortably profitable. Most people are not. But it really comes down to the domain business. There is a demand for it. The internet, people buy stuff on the internet, right? And more and more. And that's where the value is in for domains, because, you know, if you have your great address on Main Street or on Fifth Avenue or wherever it might be, you know, you have to pay a rent for that. You have to pay a price for that placement. With domains, it's the same thing. And people do understand that having a better quality domain name will enhance their business. They'll get more people in to their digital doorway type of thing to their business, and they'll make money from it. Whereas, you know, all these other sort of trendy things, there's not necessarily a business function for it, and therefore no long-term realistic value. But there's always these things that come out like, oh, well, domains are finished, right? Or websites are finished, right? And it's like, well, not quite, you know? There's also people will always need emails, right?
Okay.
And if you're a serious business, you know, there's only so long you can operate on a Hotmail or you know, a Gmail or whatever it is. And it's not that they're fine, right? Sometimes they're like, for me, I still use my personal Hotmail, but it's because I've been using it for 20, well, almost even more than that now, 20 and a lot years, let's say. And it's like, okay, it's easy for me. It's on my computer. But at the same time, when I really want to do something serious for business, you know, I know my, you know, 6-character plus 2-number Hotmail is going to just go to either, if it doesn't go to spam, somebody's simply just not going to open it.
Yeah.
They're not going to take you seriously.
Yeah, I'm still always shocked when I'm not shocked, but perhaps I'm sensitive to it, being like a hosting, email, and domain service provider. When I drive by or walk by I don't know, a hair salon or a general contractor, or I interface with the general contractor or anyone, and they write to me, or they advertise like a Gmail address or a Hotmail address, and I'm like, what an unfortunate lost opportunity for them to just advertise their brand with every message they send, or with on their walls, or on their, and whatever medium they advertise their business on. And I feel like sometimes it's just not a lack of awareness that's even available and very easy to set up. So that's maybe a little aside to, you know, an added value for a domain name.
That's
you know,
actually
your
really important.
advertisement of your business at every email. You know, that's how much more affordable can advertising get than it's implicitly part of your message that you're using and you're sending out every day either way, right? You're emailing every day. Wouldn't you want that brand to be part of that communication?
Yeah, I often say as a domain investor, there's 2 things that I really, really, really want, you know, that to grow and to be bigger within the industry. The first one is visibility, which for me is personal, you know, not personal, but it's on my side of things, which is, you know, basically I want people to go to every registrar and be able to search for all my domains without any complication. But the second thing, which is what is really important here, which also concerns, you know, companies like yourself, it's education, right? People still don't understand what the power of a domain is. You know, when you have a good domain, it's not just all those things that's most memorable, brings people to your business. It's also exactly that. It's your emails. It's like, okay, it makes things simpler. People trust you more. If you send an email out from the Hotmail or a Gmail versus, you know, let's say, you know, towing.com, right? Let's say, well, people are going to trust you more, and people are going to be more willing to spend money with you. You know, but it's also, you know, as the user side, you know, for me, if I'm selling a domain to somebody and they just think, oh, I'm going to use it for my website address, it's like, okay, there's a certain value there. But if they're educated to know that, oh, I could put the email on my truck, right? I'm a renovation company. I put my email on my truck, and like people will email that. Like that, there's extra value to that. Instead of $3,000, they're going to go, oh, well, no, that's worth like $10,000 to me, right? It makes sense. So all these things add up. I'd say for most domain investors, including myself, it's the start. You're starting, you're buying, and then as you should, you're showing your domains to other people in the industry. And let's say the endorsement is not quite shiny. You know, you bought some domains, it's like, maybe that's not the best one. For me, my process was a little bit easier because I did have experience in the past, right, that helped me get up to a certain level quick enough. But it still was not quite enough. At the start, you rarely make sales. You make quite a few mistakes. And you know, you find yourself with a portfolio of stuff that you have that sunk cost feeling. Like I know I should not renew that one at the next annual, you know, renewal point, but you do it anyways because you already spent $30 on it or $50 on it or whatever it might be. And it's hard because with one domain, it's easy to answer that thing. But when you have 100 domains like that or multiple hundreds of domains,
it's like a recurring buyer's remorse.
It's tough because the one inflection point where people go from you know, a domain investor, a tempting domain investor, to a domain investor who's doing okay. You know, you're not going to start off great, but you're at the point where it's like, okay, I think I could do this. It's when you realize, okay, you got to cut the dead weight. Your initial threshold of acquiring of quality of domain to acquire at a certain price point was too high. Right, you got to really, or too low, I guess is what I should say. You really got to up it. You got to be pickier. When I say, you know, domain investors got to buy good domains, that will be a total failure. You got to buy great domains, right? And you got to buy them at the right prices. And it's very difficult to see at the start because, as I said, when you have 100 domains or 200 domains, you don't know if you have good domains or not because, in theory, on paper, you're only supposed to sell one or two of them a year. So you wait a whole year and you haven't sold a domain. It doesn't mean you have a great portfolio, but it doesn't mean you have a bad portfolio. And so, it's really important to surround yourself with other people who will coach you a bit. But again, domains are this weird and mysterious thing. Most people fumble into them alone, right? Because you had some domains, you wanted to build a project at one point, and you have your own little thing, you have your own domains. You don't know there's a community out there, right? I think one thing is when I'm starting, I made that decision that okay, I have too many domains, I got to do something about it. The first thing I did is I joined the forums, right? There's a couple of them out there. The name pros. There's a Canadian one. What was the Canadian one again?
dn.ca.
That's it. I'm there as well, but I'm not too active. I haven't been too active in recent years in the forums. But there's that. There's also listening. Well, obviously there's all the bloggers out there and the news people out there. But there's also for me, I recently lost my dog, but I had a little dash hound, but we'd go for 3-4 hour walks. And so for me, my domain education was in my ears. It was podcasts and listening over and over again. There's a gentleman, Andrew Alleman, he has domain name Wire, and he's been doing it for, I don't know, he's at episode 580 something, right? So, I listen to those weekly. There's also Domain Sherpa, which is, a great resource for just, every week they have an hour and change sort of episodes, and there's experts in the industry who have conversations similar to ours when we're getting into more the sales part of it. But, they talk about, what they bought and what they sell it for, right? Because for me, again, it could be really exciting, right? I've bought domains for $5 that I've sold for $5,000, right? I've bought domains for $50 that I've sold for $10,000.
Yeah, so let's maybe get into that for a little bit. Tell me about your biggest sale, the one that you're most proud of, the one you still remember today. So
I'm not one of these flashy domainers, right? I'm bread and butter. I'm okay, churn and burn.
Volume.
But as time has passed, originally, my average price point was $2,000-$3,000, right? In that bread and butter range. Then, it was okay, I'm starting to sell these domains, some of them for $5,000. And recently I'm in the $10,000 and sold $15,000 range, right? And it's part of it.
And we're still talking USD here, so that's close.
The whole industry revolves in USD, unless you're lucky enough to have a Canadian, registrar where the prices are Canadian dollars, so you're going to save 30% just by the conversion. But traditionally when you price your domains, it's US dollars, and so and that's great because I sell something in US. There's a $20 commission, but conversely, there's a 30% markup because of the exchange rate, right? I typically keep my things in US dollars because I'll grow my portfolio, and every now and then I'll take some money out and pay off some old debts or whatever it is. But at the same time, it's USD. It is fun when there's an exchange, right? It's not good for certain businesses, but for domain investors, if you're buying your stuff, it hurts, right? But I already have 5,000 domains, so it's I can take my foot off the gas for buying and whatnot. In recent years, I don't buy as frequently as I have. But for me, typically, I'd buy stuff at lower auctions in the 2 figures or in the closeout phase, which used to be even $11 to $5. Now could be a little bit higher at $50. But I find that stuff that everybody else misses, and I don't need a lot of them. If it's 2 or 3 a day, hey, after a year, that's 1,000 domains or 800 domains or whatever it is. So typically, in days that I buy, it's 5 to 10 domains, but I don't buy every day nowadays. Right. But I could I've multiple domains I bought for $5 that I've sold for 5,000. But 1%, that means already there's $1,000 for the 99 other domains that I didn't renew. Yeah. Right? So that's a really important factor to keep in mind. It's not just the glitzy, flip from 5 to, there's time involved.
Yeah. So for context, at WHC, we operate Canada's premier back ordering platform, and so we probably see the most volume as any other provider in terms of what .ca can command in a back ordering capacity. And for the listeners out there, that wondering what is back ordering. When a domain expires and it's before it's available to be picked up by anybody, it goes. The process is a little bit different across different domain extensions, and it's for .ca. The process is very particular, and there are only a few select providers that participate in that process. It's called the domain drop or the TBR in more technical lingo. And at WHC, we tend to catch a lot of these domains and make them available on our auction platform at WHC.ca. And what we typically see is interest is high and growing. I mean, obviously, relative interest is probably I have a hard time to compare it, right? We don't operate the CEDO marketplaces. We don't operate the afternoon marketplaces. We see obviously through the grapevine what comes out of it, and often see sales happening in the generally in thousands. On WHC for .ca domains, we will generally see sales generally like on the high end, anywhere 5,000 to 10,000 wholesale at auction, which means generally these buyers are investors such as yourselves. They're buying domains at $5,000. They're buying domains at $10,000. They're occasionally buying domains at $20,000. So as a service provider, we don't see the inner workings of like, is this the end user? Yeah. Is this the domain investor? Yeah. The suspicion is that it's the domain investor, and I suspect if we really dug, we could find out. It's probably a combination.
I think what probably happens, your overall volume is almost definitely investor. Mm. The spikes might be where you have two end users
occasional
that just happen to be, or they're watching it. Again, because you could put in your back order, like you guys have back orders, I'm guessing?
Yeah.
Yeah, so you could put in your back order years before, right? If you wanted maple.ca, well, you put in your back order, but it might not be available for 20 years. It might not, probably never available, but I mean, it might go through the process, but you'll have a huge demand on a domain like that, and so there'll be a lot of people competing, but some of those people who put in a back order are potential end users, or who value end user pricing.
Yeah. Just for context for the audience, the back order is like the activity of sort of manifesting interest in a domain name that may or may not ever expire. At WHC, actually, the back order is not what other traditional registrars would do, as in back order anything, pay up front, and maybe you'll get it, and likely 99% of the chances you're not going to get it. You're not even going to, it's never going to drop, it's never going to expire. The back order at WHC only happens on domains that are actually available, are on the back order list. That list on .ca it lasts 1 week, so it's a much more narrow window of opportunity. That being said, if that's something that other customers, do you use back orders as a more general scope?
I don't, but there are people who do. Okay. Again, it's just my process is. I tend to buy my domains at a certain one place, but because there's 50,000 every single day, right? There's probably about 100,000 domains that expire every single day, and so that marketplace has half of them. So for me, it's not that the other venues are not good. In fact, it's even better because there'll be less competition there. But you have to work harder because there's less domains that come out. So for me, my process was that. But if we went just for the technical side, like when a domain expires, there's different things that happen. In the first 40-ish days, it stays at the registrar level where it's in the person's account who let it expire, who didn't pay for the renewal, right? Oops, I forgot. And you guys send them emails saying, oh, here's a reminder. Don't forget to renew your domain if you want to keep it and whatnot. And then typically after about 40 days, it leaves kind of the registrar side and returns to the registry, which I think for .cas it's CIRA, but for .com it's VeriSign, whatever it is, and they hold it in like a blackout period of a little over a month. So totals for .coms it's about 80 days. For .cas I think it's not too different. And then at that point, the ending point, the domain effectively deletes, so it doesn't exist anymore. So at that point, it's first come, first serve. And then as the back order services that we're talking about, they're specially set up that they know almost to a microsecond at what point that domain will be available. Right. And therefore, like you might have a platform where, you have 4 people who prepaid to be to get that domain. So because there's 4 of them, they got to go to auction. I think for you guys, it's a little bit different because for you guys, it drops completely and then it goes straight to the auction. Or how does it work for you guys?
Yeah, so the WHC domain auction platform within the .ca namespace, essentially every week, Sierra, the domain registry, drops 10,000 plus domains. Those domains are available to any registrar company like any service provider like WHC to catch. Obviously, in order to catch these domains, you need to have a platform that is set up, tweaked, and purpose-built to catch the domains that you think are going to be useful to the end user. And that list of 10,000 domains, there's probably going to be a handful that are going to be user. But a handful is generally anywhere from 50 to 150 is sort of our sweet spot every week that are generally going to be auctioned off at anywhere from $500 to $25,000 per domain. So we collect early signals. So we try to get a sense of which domains are people going to want in that upcoming week. Based on those signals, we rank them internally. We have an internal algorithm to say, okay, these are the ones that are likely going to be in demand, either because somebody's actually manifested interest by bidding on it beforehand, or because of some other reason. But generally, like the users will tell us, like by bidding before they drop, that's the ones they're interested in. Based on the amount of those bids, we'll rank them in an order of importance, and we'll go more aggressively for the ones that are in higher demand. Then at the millisecond that those domains become available, we fire on all cannons, try to catch those domains. At WHC, our success rate has been at around 80%. So we're highly successful. We're very proud of that. We're very proud of that. We're really strong in domain backorder catching, and I really feel like it's a unique opportunity for domain investors to catch domains at really affordable prices compared to what they'll end up selling them for. So I just want to take a minute to just talk about pricing and put things in perspective. There are a couple of things that our listeners might not be aware of, and perhaps even some of the more the veterans by now definitely know and embody and understand the pricing. First off, the differences between some key pricings from .com.ca's. The .coms will generally retail for around anywhere from 30 to 40% more, depending on obviously who you buy it through. So your average kind of wholesale price at the registry is going to be roughly $15 Canadian. You mentioned about $11 US. That's about right. Obviously, I'm rounding, and for the .ca, roughly $10 Canadian. So already there, when you're looking at .com.ca. .ca is a much more value mechanism for purchasing and for maintaining. And when you're buying as a consumer, you'll often go to if you're not you're not very kind of hooked up to the industry, you'll go to the first place you'll go to the big players, the big brands that you're aware of. You may have heard of GoDaddy as a brand. You'll go there. Even if this very studio, I was just looking it up before coming here, and you can do a quick Whois search on any domain and find out a little bit more about it, where it's registered, who they host with. So public information. So I'm not divulging anything secret. This studio is hosted and at GoDaddy, registered at GoDaddy. These are and I love finding these customers because I just know for a fact that they're paying anywhere from 30 to 50% more at the very least for the exact same services they could be getting from a local provider like WHC, hosted in Canada, delivered in their language, in an office nearby. But most customers just don't know that, and they've seen maybe the advertisements, and they know those big brands and they trust them, and they're like, okay, well, I'll spend the $30 a year on this domain, I'll spend the $300 a year on the hosting. When they get without realizing that you've got local alternatives that will give you as good as, if not superior, level of service and quality at a fraction of the price.
That's exactly what I was going to say. What again, if you're going to spend $15 versus $18, but it doesn't even matter. You guys might be $15, but I mean the $3 difference is meaningless when it comes to customer service. And if you have a local place that if something goes wrong, you can actually go knock on the door. But that's not realistic. But a local phone number or the customer service especially on the business side. For me, I'm a volume guy. I'm gonna, every penny I'm gonna pinch, and I know enough about the industry that I can do most stuff on my own. But as a business, if you want to start your website and online, whatever storefront, or if you have your hair salon, right, and you want to have some hosting for it, and something goes wrong, you want there to be somebody you can contact, right? And usually it's a phone number that's there, or a chat that's there more often than not, but reliable, competent customer service, because that is not something you can take for granted in this industry. A lot of places do not have it.
Yeah,
Even
100%.
some of the biggest players don't offer it all the time. One of the biggest names we mentioned no longer offers 24/7 support in Canada, right? We say 24/7, but it's only in the United States. In Canada, it's, weekends is very limited. And it's like, okay, sometimes you don't need that, right? If you're only working your website during the week, well, it's okay. But quality customer service before buying a domain name.
Yeah, I've got that $30,000 domain name
pick up that phone
on the
and
line,
especially,
something about to go
but
wrong with it.
This goes 100-fold for hosting. Like, again, I'm not really involved in that thing, but I do know I have my customers who want to build their websites. For hosting, there's so many other things that could go wrong, and there's so many other features that might be there or not there. Make sure you have all the features you need. But again, just pick up that phone and see if somebody answers it, right? I mean, with you guys, I'm in Montreal, so I might not deal too much in .ca domain names, but I know some of your employees I've known as well. But I do know that you have a good reputation, and again, you're not gonna, if your price is $199 and the competitor's is $198, just spend the extra little bit. The price points is really, when you're talking 5% or 10% or 20 or even 50% difference. Sometimes that one night you're spending on the phone where nobody's answering, or the person's giving you canned AI responses, is this the most frustrating thing in the world.
Yeah.
And then you would give $1,000 just to have that one person who picks up the phone be competent and know how to help you and resolve your situation. So,
100%.
Yeah.
To close, Arif, it sounds like you've had an amazing run as a domain investor, and just like any other entrepreneurs, there's been ups and downs. You've operated this both as a side gig and occasionally as a primary business. You've made good money from it. What would you say to the aspiring entrepreneur out there that's maybe considering getting into the business? What are some of the words of wisdom you would leave them with?
I'd say the first thing you gotta do is start slow, or start with 0 purchases. Look around, educate yourself, go to the forums. Again, go to the auction platforms like yourself and just paper trade. Like to say, okay, I think this is going to go to a certain price at the end of the day or at the end of the auction, and see how close you are. You'll never be exact with domains, but just start slow, grow slow, be involved in the community. If there's one thing that I love domains, because again, it's a magical blend of data and science and that aspect of it, and logic, and then like sort of art and sort of stuff that inspiring, and coming up with words that actually have meaning beyond the actual the keyword that's there. And so there's that moment where you find that one domain. It's like, oh man, nobody saw this one. This is amazing. This is going to go for a lot. But beyond that, once you start growing into the community and meeting other people, domain investors are the craziest group of most eccentric people, and there's all so different, but all like really interesting people. There's very few people in this industry that I would say are not interesting. Like for me, when I did the conference, again, it was like at the end of, it was 2021, it was 9 days online, and 50 of the top leaders in the industry. But that was amazing, but it was all the people who came, and in my regular, back then, I don't do it as often, but the Zoom rooms on the Domain Social, where it's just like, we'd be on for hours and hours, talking domains, sometimes other stuff, but like the community of domain investors is just the coolest group of people you could ever meet. So yeah, I'm very proud of my success as being one of the rare people who are profitable as a domain investor, even if I'm not doing millions and millions. I have my process, which I very much enjoy, and it's my sideline, and it's going to eventually be my main thing. But on the other side, it's just the community aspect of it. It's the people are just amazing, and because there are so many different ways of investing in domain names, we're not really all competing with each other. So we can really be helpful towards each other. Sometimes we keep a little of our secret sauce away from each other, but for the most part, it's really friendly people who really try to help other people. And, I would not be where I am today as a domain investor if it wasn't for that community, if it wasn't for people sharing just little tidbits of information here or there, or rambling on like we have today, about all kinds of things. And it's like, it doesn't matter what we talk about in conversations like this. There's always something new that, you can learn and pick up and improve yourself on. So yeah, that's, overall, I think it's why I really like, domain investing, because just they're so cool, and the people in the community are also super cool. So yeah.
Fantastic. Arif, thank you so much for joining.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Hope to see you again soon. So I hope you enjoyed this podcast, and if you did, I invite you to like our channel and like our podcast, and tune back in and listen for some more fun content with entrepreneurs, trailblazers, or people that are building and creating exciting things in Canada.